Have you ever looked at a world map? Did you see that one country that stretches across continents? That country is Russia. It is enormous. It is the biggest country on Earth by far. It is almost twice the size of the next largest country, Canada. How did one nation get so incredibly, unbelievably huge? It is a question that boggles the mind. It makes you wonder about history, geography, and the people who made it happen. The story of Russia's size is not just about land. It is a story full of adventure, ambition, and science. Let's dive in and explore this amazing journey together. Consider this. Russia's size is truly staggering. It covers over 17 million square kilometers. That is about 1/8 of all the land on Earth. It spans 11 different time zones. When people in Western Russia are having breakfast, people in Eastern Russia are getting ready for dinner. This vastness is not just empty space. It is filled with incredible natural features. Think of deep forests, towering mountains, and mighty rivers. Its geography is as diverse as it is wide. Understanding this geography is the first step to understanding its size. The land itself played a huge role in how the country grew and expanded over many centuries. The story begins a long time ago. It did not start as a giant. Russia began as a small group of settlements. It was a place called Kievan Rus. This early state was centered around cities like Kiev and Novgorod. It was a collection of Slavic tribes, traders, and warriors. They lived in a land of thick forests and winding rivers. These rivers were like highways. They allowed people to travel, trade, and connect with distant lands. From these humble beginnings, a powerful idea began to form. The idea of a unified Russian land. This idea would fuel centuries of incredible growth and change. So, what is the secret recipe for becoming the world's largest country? It is a mix of many ingredients. You need determined rulers with big dreams. You need brave explorers willing to face the unknown. You need a geography that both challenges and allows for expansion. You also need a bit of luck and a lot of historical moments to go your way. Russia had all of these things and more. Its journey from a small principality to a transcontinental giant is one of history's most epic tales. Are you ready to unravel this mystery? Let's get started. The science of history awaits. Let's travel back in time. Over 1,000 years ago, Russia was not the giant we see today. It started as a small state called Kievan Rus. Imagine a handful of towns scattered in a huge forest. That was Kievan Rus. The people were Eastern Slavs. They were farmers, hunters, and traders. They lived their lives along the great rivers of Eastern Europe. Rivers like the Dnieper were super important. They were the main roads for trade and travel. People used boats to move goods and connect with other cultures. This was the very beginning of the Russian story. A story that starts small. The land itself shaped these early people. Eastern Europe has vast, flat plains. These plains are called the East European Plain. They made it easy for people to move around, but also easy for invaders to attack. There were few natural barriers like high mountains. To the north were thick, dark forests called the taiga. To the south were open grasslands called the steppe. This geography presented both opportunities and dangers. The people of Kievan Rus had to be tough and resilient. They learned to use their environment to survive and eventually to thrive. Their world was big and wild. Then, something major happened. The Mongols arrived. In the 13th century, a powerful army from the east, led by Batu Khan, swept across the land. This was the Golden Horde. They conquered Kievan Rus and many other places. For over 200 years, Russian princes had to pay tribute to the Mongol Khans. This was a very difficult time. The old centers of power like Kiev were weakened. But this challenge also sparked a change. It forced the scattered Russian principalities to think about uniting. A new center of power began to rise far to the northeast. That new center was a small town called Moscow. At first, Moscow was just a minor outpost. It was deep in the forest, which offered some protection from invaders. The princes of Moscow were very clever. They learned to work with the Mongol rulers. They collected tribute for the Khans, which made them powerful and rich. Slowly and steadily, Moscow grew stronger. It began to absorb the smaller towns and lands around it. This was the seed of the future Russian Empire. A small wooden fort on a river would one day become the heart of the largest nation on Earth. Science. It's all about cause and effect. Who were these early leaders? The first rulers of Rus belonged to the Rurik dynasty. The story says a Viking chieftain named Rurik was invited to rule in the 9th century. He and his descendants established control over the Slavic tribes. They built a powerful state based in Kiev. These early Rurik princes were warriors and traders. They fought off enemies and established trade routes all the way to the Byzantine Empire in the south. They brought law, order, and a sense of shared identity to the region. They were the original architects of the Russian state, laying the first crucial stones. After the Mongol invasion, a different branch of the Rurik dynasty took charge in Moscow. These Moscow princes were patient and strategic. A key figure was Ivan I, also known as Ivan Khalida, or Ivan the Moneybag. He was very good at managing money and politics. He maintained a good relationship with the Golden Horde. This allowed him to build up Moscow's wealth and influence without attracting too much negative attention. He convinced the head of the Russian Orthodox Church to move to Moscow. This made Moscow the spiritual center of the Russian lands, which was a huge deal. It was a brilliant political move. The real turning point came with Ivan III, also known as Ivan the Great. He ruled in the late 15th century. He was a visionary leader who had a grand plan. He wanted to unite all the Russian-speaking lands under Moscow's rule. He was a master of diplomacy and warfare. He annexed many neighboring principalities, including the powerful Republic of Novgorod. Novgorod was a huge, wealthy city-state that controlled a vast territory stretching to the Arctic Ocean. By taking Novgorod, Ivan III more than doubled the size of his state. He was truly building an empire. Ivan the Great did something even more amazing. He stopped paying tribute to the Mongols. In 1480, he faced the Mongol army at the Ugra River. After a long standoff, the Mongol army retreated without a major battle. This event marked the end of Mongol dominance over Russia. It was a huge victory for Moscow. Ivan III began to call himself Tsar, the Russian word for Caesar. He saw himself as the heir to the Roman and Byzantine emperors. He had a vision of Moscow as the Third Rome. This idea gave Russia a powerful new identity and a mission to expand and protect its faith and culture. After Ivan the Great came his grandson Ivan IV. We know him as Ivan the Terrible. His nickname in Russian, Grozny, actually means fearsome or awe-inspiring, and he certainly was. He was the first ruler to be officially crowned as Tsar of all Russia. He was brilliant, devout, but also paranoid and cruel. He wanted to create an absolute monarchy with all power in his hands. He strengthened the state and pushed Russia's borders outward in a dramatic way. Ivan's reign was a time of great change and brutal, forceful expansion. He left a legacy that was both magnificent and terrifying. Ivan the Terrible's biggest military successes were in the east and south. He targeted the remaining Mongol successor states, the Khanates. In 1552, his army conquered the Khanate of Kazan, a powerful state on the Volga River. This was a massive victory. It opened up the entire Volga River basin for Russian settlement and trade. The conquest was celebrated with the construction of a spectacular new cathedral in Moscow. That cathedral is now one of Russia's most famous landmarks, St. Basil's Cathedral. Its colorful, onion-shaped domes are a symbol of this important victory. 4 years after conquering Kazan, Ivan's forces marched south. They captured the Khanate of Astrakhan. This city was located where the Volga River flows into the Caspian Sea. Gaining control of Astrakhan was a huge strategic win. It gave Russia control of the entire length of the Volga River. The Volga is Europe's longest river. It became a Russian superhighway for trade with Persia and Central Asia. With these two conquests, Ivan the Terrible had broken the power of the old Mongol Khanates. He had added vast, fertile territories to his growing empire. Russia was no longer just a forest state, but Ivan's expansion was not just about war, it was also about colonization. He encouraged settlers to move into these new lands. He built forts and towns to secure the new frontiers. This eastward push set the stage for the next, even bigger phase of Russian expansion. Ivan's reign was a paradox. He created a secret police force that terrorized his own people. He even killed his own son in a fit of rage. Yet he also transformed Russia from a regional power into a multi-ethnic empire. He laid the groundwork for the conquest of a whole continent. The age of Siberian exploration was about to begin. After Ivan the Terrible's death, Russia plunged into chaos. This period is called the Time of Troubles. There was famine, civil war, and foreign invasion. The Rurik dynasty ended. It really seemed like the country might fall apart completely. But in 1613 a council of nobles gathered. They decided to elect a new Tsar. They chose a young boy named Michael Romanov. This was the beginning of the Romanov dynasty. This new family would rule Russia for the next 300 years. Their main goal was to restore order and continue the mission of making Russia bigger and stronger. The early Romanovs focused on stabilizing the country. They rebuilt the government and the army. They knew that a strong state was needed to hold their vast lands together. They also knew that expansion was key to security and wealth. While the Tsars in Moscow were busy with European politics, something incredible was happening far to the east. A new kind of pioneer was pushing the boundaries of the known world. These were not soldiers of the Tsar's army. They were fur traders, adventurers, and Cossacks. These rugged individuals were the driving force behind Russia's next great leap in size. These explorers were drawn east by a powerful lure fur. Siberia was a vast wilderness teeming with animals like sable, fox, and ermine. Their pelts were incredibly valuable in Europe. They were like soft gold. Small groups of adventurers pushed deeper and deeper into the Siberian forest and tundra. They followed the great Siberian rivers, which flowed from south to north. They built small wooden forts called ostrogs along the way. These forts became trading posts and administrative centers. They demanded tribute from the local Siberian peoples, often in the form of furs. This expansion happened with incredible speed. Think about it. In less than 60 years, Russian explorers and traders crossed the entire continent of Asia. They traveled from the Ural Mountains in the west to the Pacific Ocean in the east. In 1639, a group of Cossacks reached the shores of the Sea of Okhotsk. They had crossed thousands of kilometers of uncharted territory. This was a journey far longer and more difficult than Columbus's voyage across the Atlantic. The Romanov state simply followed behind these pioneers, claiming the land they had discovered. This is how Russia acquired Siberia, the largest part of its territory. Siberia. The very name conjures images of ice, snow, and endless wilderness. This immense land makes up about 77% of Russia's total area. But how did Russia manage to claim this vast territory? The answer lies in geography and determination. Siberia is crisscrossed by some of the world's mightiest rivers. Rivers like the Ob, the Yenisei, and the Lena. These rivers mostly flow north into the Arctic Ocean, but their tributaries flow east and west. Clever explorers found that they could travel up one river, carry their boats over a short piece of land, a portage, and then travel down another river system. This river hopping technique allowed small groups of men to travel thousands of kilometers with surprising speed. They were led by frontiersmen called promyshleniki. These were private entrepreneurs, a mix of hunters, traders, and explorers. They were tough, resourceful, and often ruthless. They were searching for valuable furs, especially the dark silky pelt of the sable. The Russian government encouraged them. The state wanted the tax revenue from the fur trade, so it granted these adventurers permission to explore and claim new lands in the name of the Tsar. It was a partnership that fueled rapid expansion across a continent. The conquest of Siberia was not a simple, empty land grab. People already lived there. Dozens of indigenous groups, each with their own language and culture, called Siberia home. Groups like the Yakuts, the Buryats, and the Evenks. The arrival of the Russians brought massive changes. The Russians had guns which gave them a huge military advantage. They built forts and demanded a fur tax called the yasak from the local people. Some indigenous groups resisted fiercely, others tried to cooperate, but the result was the same. They were gradually brought under the control of the distant Tsar in Moscow. The sheer emptiness and harshness of Siberia also played a role. The climate is extreme. Winters are brutally cold and long. The population was very sparse. There were no large cities or organized states to block the Russian advance. Small groups of armed Russians could project power over huge areas. By the end of the 17th century, Russia had claimed all of Siberia, right up to the Pacific coast. This eastward dash added an enormous resource-rich territory to the empire. It transformed Russia from a European power into a true Eurasian giant, a country that spanned 2 continents. Consider the physics of that expansion. At the end of the 17th century, a new Romanov Tsar came to the throne. He was a human whirlwind, a giant of a man full of energy and ideas. His name was Peter the Great. Peter looked at his huge country and saw that it was powerful, but also isolated and backward compared to Western Europe. He was determined to change that. He traveled to Europe, where he worked in shipyards and studied new technologies. He came back to Russia with a mission to modernize his country. He wanted to build a powerful army and navy and make Russia a major player on the world stage. Peter's ambition led him to war. He fought a long war with Sweden, which was the dominant power in Northern Europe at the time. Peter wanted a coastline on the Baltic Sea. He called this a window to the west. After many years of fighting, Russia won the Great Northern War. On land captured from Sweden, Peter built a brand new capital city from scratch. He called it St. Petersburg. It was built on a swamp, by force, and at a great human cost. But it became a magnificent city of palaces and canals. It was Russia's new, modern European face. This secured Russia's western flank and made it a European empire. While Peter was opening his window to the west, he was also keeping the door to the east wide open. He understood the importance of Russia's Asian territories. He sponsored new expeditions to explore and map the far eastern reaches of his empire. The most famous of these was the Great Northern Expedition, led by a Danish explorer in Russian service named Vitus Bering. Bering was tasked with finding out if Asia and North America were connected by land. He sailed through the strait that now bears his name, the Bering Strait, and proved that they were separate continents. These expeditions were incredible scientific achievements. They mapped vast, unknown coastlines and islands. They studied the local peoples, plants and animals. This exploration led Russia to go even further east. Russian fur traders crossed the Bering Strait and established settlements in Alaska. For a time, Russia was a North American power too. Peter the Great's reign was a pivotal moment. He used Western technology and ideas to strengthen his state. He then used that strength to project power both west and east. He cemented Russia's status as a massive transcontinental empire with global ambitions. Let's fast forward to the 20th century. The Romanov dynasty came to a violent end in 1917 with the Russian Revolution. The Tsar was overthrown, and after a bloody civil war, a new state was born, the Soviet Union or USSR. It was the world's first communist country. The leaders of the Soviet Union, like Vladimir Lenin and Joseph Stalin, had a different ideology, but they were just as determined as the Tsars to hold on to the vast territory they had inherited. They wanted to maintain control over the huge, multi-ethnic empire. The name changed, but the immense size remained. The Soviet government reorganized the old Russian Empire. They created a federation of republics. Russia was the largest of these, called the Russian Soviet Federative Socialist Republic. Other republics included Ukraine, Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, and many others. On a map, it looked like these were separate countries joined together. But in reality, all power was held by the central government in Moscow. The borders were redrawn, but the control from the center was absolute. The Soviet Union was, in many ways, the old Russian Empire under a new name and a new political system. The Soviet Union continued to be a colossal country. It stretched from the Baltic Sea to the Pacific Ocean, just like the empire before it. The government controlled everything: the economy, the military, and the lives of the people. They pushed for rapid industrialization. They built massive factories, dams, and cities, often in remote parts of Siberia. They used the vast natural resources of the country, oil, gas, minerals, to build up their military and industrial might. The Soviet era was a time of immense hardship and repression for many people, but it also saw the country become one of the world's two superpowers. In 1991, something dramatic happened. The Soviet Union collapsed, the communist system failed, the 15 republics that made up the USSR all declared their independence. This was a huge moment in world history. The map changed again. Countries like Ukraine, Georgia, and Kazakhstan became independent nations. Russia itself, the Russian Federation, became the successor state to the Soviet Union. It lost a significant amount of territory and population, but even after this breakup, the Russian Federation remained by far the largest country in the world. The historical core built over centuries was still intact. So here we are today on September 6, 2025. We look at the map and Russia is still the giant. Its incredible size is a direct result of this long, amazing story. It is a story of geography with flat plains and river highways that allowed for easy movement. It is a story of ambition, driven by powerful rulers like Ivan the Great and Peter the Great. It is a story of economics, fueled by the hunt for soft gold, the valuable furs of Siberia. It is a story of relentless eastward expansion, a centuries-long push across a vast and wild continent. All these factors combine to create the country we see today. Russia's size gives it both great advantages and great challenges. An advantage is its incredible wealth of natural resources. It has massive deposits of oil, natural gas, coal, timber, and precious metals. These resources are crucial to its economy and its power in the world. But its size also creates challenges. How do you govern such a huge and diverse country? How do you build and maintain roads, railways, and pipelines across 11 time zones? How do you connect people who live thousands of kilometers apart? These are the questions that Russian leaders have faced for centuries and still face today. The story of Russia's growth is a powerful reminder of how history shapes the world we live in. The decisions made by Tsars, the journeys of explorers, and the flow of rivers hundreds of years ago are still visible on our modern maps. Every country has a story of how it came to be, but Russia's is one of the most epic. It teaches us about power, ambition, and the deep connection between people and their environment. Understanding this history helps us understand the world today. It is a story that is still unfolding. Now it is your turn. What do you think is the most amazing part of Russia's story? Was it the conquest of Siberia, Peter the Great's reforms, the Mongol influence? The world is a fascinating place, full of incredible stories just waiting to be explored. Keep asking questions, keep seeking answers, and most importantly, keep exploring. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Give this a like if you learned something new, and be sure to stay connected for more scientific and historical adventures. The world is your laboratory.